What's up, fellow adult collectors? Welcome to Civilian Collectibles. Today, I'm going to start a series of top 10 lists covering the previous decade of 2010 to 2019. Since McFarlane Toys now has the DC license, I thought it would be best to start this series by taking a look back at my favorite figures from Mattel. If you've been watching my channel for a while, then you know that most of my collection is based on live-action properties. However, if this is your first time landing on my channel, hi, my name is Seville, and here I'd like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you enjoy what you see here, be sure to give me a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Without further ado, here are my top 10 favorite DC figures from Mattel between the years of 2010 and 2019. Starting my list off at number 10 is the Steppenwolf Build-A-Figure from the DC Multiverse Justice League wave. Mattel was calling these Collect and Connect figures, but I'm still going to call it a Build-A-Figure just because it rolls off the tongue a little easier. Out of the various movie Build-A-Figures that Mattel did, Steppenwolf was my favorite one. Granted, it did have some quality control problems with loose joints, especially in the wrists and the ankles, but aesthetically speaking, I do think it still looks the best. Moving on to number 9, I'm going with Deadshot from the Suicide Squad movie. Even though they did take a lot of liberties with the character's overall design, they did still maintain some of the key signatures, such as the mask with the eye monocle and the wrist guns, enough to the point that any fan of the character should be able to easily identify who it is, even though it's not entirely comic book accurate. Coming in at number 8 is one of the few actual comic book based figures on my list. This is the DC Multiverse Walgreens exclusive Bizarro figure. I like this Bizarro figure so much that last year when I did a top 10 Superman figures list, I included this as a dishonorable mention. You know, because everything about Bizarro is backwards. Even in the package, he was placed facing the back of it so that you could mostly just see his cape. This figure was made reusing a lot of parts from the DC Rebirth version of Superman, and it was made well enough that a lot of collectors were hoping it would be used again to make a more classic version of Superman himself. Just a quick note, I did forget to mention this earlier, I'm not going to include any actual Superman figures on this list because I didn't want to repeat any from my top 10 Superman figures. Next up, coming in at number 7 is General Zod from the Man of Steel Movie Masters. The sculpting detail and paint applications on this figure were very impressive for Mattel in 2013. The mask accessory added to the overall aesthetics even more. General Zod's overall appearance made this one of my favorite figures to come out of the Movie Masters lines. Moving on to number 6, we have the Dark Knight himself, but not the version from the Dark Knight movies. While I still have a preference for the movie figures over the comic figures, I definitely still have an affinity for when the movies use a more comic accurate look. And as far as those looks go, the Ben Affleck Batman is absolutely as close as an on-screen version of Batman has gotten to a comic accurate look. I honestly do hope that McFarlane gets to go back and take a shot at these figures as well. Starting the top 5 is another comic-based figure, this time from the DC Universe Classics line. The 90s version of Superboy, based on his appearance after the events of the death and return of Superman. To this day, this is still my favorite design for Superboy. I can remember years of anticipating Mattel making this figure. My one and only gripe I've ever had with this figure is the S-shield on the back of the jacket not being quite comic accurate. Everything else is translated into plastic form just about perfectly. On number 4, we're going to move back into the DC Multiverse movie figures, with the Toys R Us exclusive Wonder Woman that came with her shield along with the shield for the Ares Build-A-Figure. Considering how prominent the shield, sword, and lasso all were for her in her solo movie, you would think the basic line would have included the figure that had all those weapons. But no, Mattel decided the only way to get all that together would be to buy the Toys R Us exclusive version. Coming in at number 3 is one of my top 10 from 2018, Aquaman from his solo movie DC Multiverse wave. Mattel began to show a lot of improvements in 2018, such as finally having double jointed knees and vastly improving the sculpts. This head sculpt was light years closer to Jason Momoa's likeness than any Aquaman figure coming before it. It also helped that Aquaman finally had a comic book accurate looking costume and trident. Coming in at number 2 is another DC Multiverse Build-A-Figure, Super Lex, based on DC Rebirth. In this story, Lex was given the cape from the New 52 version of Superman after he died, so he attempted to build his own armor to replace that Superman. That whole story was probably my favorite of the whole DC Rebirth series because it was written by the same guys from the 90s, and it just felt like all the stories I remember reading as a teenager. Because of that, this is one of the only comic book based Build-A-Figures I have in my collection. And finally, Getting to number 1, if you've seen my top 10 of 2019 list, you might have already guessed this. The DC Multiverse Shazam, aka Captain Marvel, from the Shazam movie. Just like I said in that top 10 2019 list, this figure really shows what Mattel should have been doing all along. Finally giving us double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, and an entirely new torso style altogether. Since this was the last Mattel DC Multiverse figure I bought, they at least went out on a good note for me. So there you have it, my top 10 Mattel DC figures. What do you guys think? Do you own any of these? Is there anything you'd add to it or take away? Is there anything you're still hunting for? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video,
get over here!
And subscribe to Civilian Collectibles.